over the 24 just in case. I have my painter's tape, okay? Or actually my drafting tape, excuse me, from Blick. I have my white eraser and my sharpener, okay? That's pretty much all you need, to be honest. And I have some paper towel here just in case, in order to sort of, again, wrap my head throughout this assignment, but also to then understand what is it I can sort of keep clean and oil free from my hands, because these are all oil based. If I place my hand on top of the actual paper, if I apply a lot of pressure, I don't want my hand to kind of smear off the colors. I also have my ruler I'm also going to be using, okay, throughout this assignment. But really, the main star of the show is the paper. Now, again, don't be intimidated throughout this process, guys, okay? The paper is 19 by 25. So it's huge. Okay, it's really massive, which is great because, again, there's a lot of surface to work on. Now, you could use the back to practice, and that's something we're going to be doing today. But really, this is the brand that you should be getting. It's the Canson 19 by 25 tone black sheet of paper. If you want to pick up a few, I would highly recommend, but you should always have at least two, because if you make any mistakes, if you make any sort of, again, changes or even experiments, you want to be able to have at least one good one and then one for experimenting, okay? So let's talk a little bit about how to start off this assignment. Now, the first thing you would need to do, okay, is get your apple green, okay? Now, another thing you should also keep in mind would be to really sharpen your pencil. If you do run out, okay, you can just go buy individual colors if you would like. You don't want it too dark, or excuse me, too sharp. Okay. And I like to kind of keep the paper towel too, also to kind of keep all the excess pencil off of there. Now, what's one thing I always like to do throughout this process? I have my paper, right? What I would like to do, okay, is kind of grid off my composition. But before I do that, and I have like 6 sheets of paper under here, because I don't want it to move. I'm going to make a nice clean border at the edge of my paper. So I'm going to leave about, what, say 1.5 inch on the bottom, and then 1.5 inch on all 4 sides. Now, again, if you want to follow along, guys, you're more than happy to. Okay. We're just experimenting today. But really, during this time, you should be researching references and finding the best one. And now is an opportunity to ask whether or not if it's a good one or not. You can send that to me as well. You can forward that image on Canvas or just upload it under the assignments tab. And then I can do a screen share and we can see as a class how the image can be used, or should it be used, excuse me. Just flipping the image upside down. Now, both sheets of the paper on both sides have the same surface. So it is completely okay to use the back. Keep that in mind. It doesn't change the properties or the tooth of the paper. Zoom out because again, so I have my image right here. You can see it's massive. It's pretty large, right? Now, first thing you want to do, okay? Let's apply grid. Okay, now you could freehand this, Or you could kind of work more efficiently. So if you have any difficulties throughout this process, you can always make some changes. But again, this process is crucial. Okay, we have some two diagonal lines that meet from the top right to the bottom left, top left to the bottom right. Horizontal line that what? Meets in the middle. And then again, I have a vertical line. Whoop, that runs through. Okay. What else do I do? My diamond up top here. Do the same thing here. And again, guys, even though this paper is large, do not be intimidated by it. We're all working larger scale now for the final. That's why you have 3 weeks to work on this assignment. Time is of an essence. Make another set of horizontal lines. And this should all be familiar for everyone. Why? Because we've done this multiple times. And this helps as a guide when we're beginning the process of creating our composition. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Now, what I'd like to do is talk about the reference, okay? Now, is there a reference that anybody would like me to use for the demo? Unless I can just use the same Jaguar.
I have one. How do I post it again?
Oh, send it. You could also, Kavina, you could drop it on the chat.
Okay.
I think it's like a drag and drop, I think.
Drag and drop. Okay, well, give me 1 second.
It might work.
Yeah, I'm about the same with technology too. It might happen. Hold on 1 second.
I remember one of my students told me, they were like, oh, you can drag and drop in the chat. And I'm like, oh, I did not know that. So it's a great, quick, useful tool.
Oh, no.
It's weird. You know how it says like type message here, that area?
Oh, okay.
Take that image and just drag it to that.
Okay.
It automatically sends it. And remember to do everyone. So like if anybody else wants to like look at it too, they could look at it on their end too.
Oh, because you have to click it first. Computer.
Oh, let me get Naeem in here. Excuse me. Any questions, guys, about the grid so far? Was this easy? Was this self-explanatory? We all know this, right?
There we go. I got it.
Okay.
Oh, it's supposed to. There you go.
Okay, we have one image. Oh, this is perfect.
Ah, good.
So I'll do a screen share if you don't mind, Kavina, and then
Not at
again,
all.
this is a reference that we will be using for the, do you mind if I use this for the demo?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Now, there's a few things I want to talk a little bit about the image. Now, the quality is great. You zoom in. Notice when things get too pixelated, it's okay. But if it's like really blurry, then it's something that Kavina might consider either collecting another reference, same image, but probably a better resolution. But I think the resolution here is great. Wonderful picture quality, right? But what do you notice? The picture plane. It's almost a square, almost, right? Now, there's a few things, Kavina, that I would recommend to do. I would either shrink one side to probably be around, what, like right around here, but then you can move your actual picture
Oh,
plane and crop off this excess edge or this excess edge. Now you could change it. You could say like here, like you
right.
could change it like this, or you can change it like I'm just for giggles, we're just going to say
Yeah,
like this, right? You can also change what?
make it smaller.
Well, orientation.
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
can make it a landscape orientation. So for
oh, yeah,
example, Kavina can just use this kind of position. So if I crop this hypothetically, so this will be the image, right? Because again, based off of what? The picture plane we've discussed in all of our assignments, what do we have to keep in mind for? Looking at the reference that we use, and sort of again, when we're using the system of the grid, being mindful and saying, okay, so this is sort of roughly around my, again, these measurements are not perfectly exact, but it's right about there. So if my paper is about this size, let's say, right, the 19 by 25.
yeah,
Do I want my image like this? Do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? Do you want it, portrait? Do you want it landscape? These
yes.
are all some things that, again, Kavina will decide, not me. Because again, this is their reference. This is not mine.
My thing is that I just don't like, I know we're doing portraits, but like one's whole head, because when they cut it off, I always feel like there's part of the picture missing. That's how I always think.
Yeah.
So I definitely
Yeah.
would want the whole
Well,
head.
this that might be an interesting approach, though, again, conceptually, because again, you could also, let's say, for example, I'm just going to say as a hypothetical, you can change and crop the image to right about here.
Yeah,
I noticed that the animal's position has changed, but really to make things less complicated, as a suggestion, I would probably keep it simple,
yeah,
probably put it in a portrait position. So I would say I kind of like this side of the wing more because you see
yeah,
this light instead of this side. So
right.
I would say like right around here.
Yeah.
Actually, go back a little bit more. And let's see how that looks. So if I crop it,
Oh, that looks good. Because you
you know,
still see his whole face.
yes,
Yeah.
it's
And you still
nice.
get the color of the wing as well. That's really pretty. I have
Exactly.
another photo reference as well, but this is the one I liked a little bit more.
Do you want to show the other one, or do you want
Yeah,
to send the other one?
yeah,
And then we'll go from there. We'll say like a comparison from one to
yeah,
the.
one to
But
the other.
this is good. I mean, because for one thing, we have nice shadows. We have a
Yeah,
great light source from above, as well as from the left. And there's cast shadows on the wing, which is fantastic. Um, Let me know, Kavina, when you send the image.
yeah.
And I
I
can
just sent it to you right there.
okay, let me see. Let me open this one. Oh, this one's let's actually, you know what? I'm glad you sent this one because let's talk about it
It doesn't
because
have as
now,
many pixels. It's
yep,
blurrier.
yep. So let's look at this as an example. So if you guys notice, you guys can see this, correct?
Yes, I can.
Both images.
Yeah,
Now, one has better resolution, but the other one is it's so oversaturated with color. And again, you zoom in, and this is what you don't want it to happen. This sort
right.
of isolation, because then it gets frustrating. It's like, wait, what color is this?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And again, look at the beak. There's this black line that goes around. That's really strange.
yeah.
Shadow and
Yeah, because I think there's just a really small photo, and so you're never going to get it like with the right definition and the detail that you really need.
yep.
Even though I like the colors, but and then I think they probably focused a lot where the eye was, because that
Yep.
seems really detailed, and the rest seems blurry.
Mhm. It's interesting too. The body looks strange.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't look bird-like. It almost looks like this is
It's
a human chest.
snails. Yeah, yeah, it looks different. But yeah,
I
that was
mean,
the first one I saw, and then when I saw this other one the first one, I was like, ooh, that one's really good.
I mean, I think the beak is really striking too in this one.
Yeah, I like the blues in it.
Yeah. No, again, it's up to you, Kavina. Which one would
Yeah,
you like to use?
the first.
The first one? Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna eliminate this. We're gonna enlarge this. And are you happy with this composition, or do you want me
Yes.
to change it?
No, I like it.
Okay. So now let's apply our grid. Now again, diagonal line. Ooh, that's not a straight line. I'm gonna move this. Hold on, it's not a straight line either. There you go. Now, again, I'm using preview on my Mac. Those of you who want to print out your image, if you want to, oh, that's not a straight line. If you want to download the image on your computer, use some sort of like whatever software you would like to use. It's completely up to you. I'm just using preview because it's free and I like free, right? So I'm going to move this down again. We're just trying to find the center of our image. So again, I'm just using my mouse. You really want to be as accurate as possible. But again, this is just for the sake of the demo that we're using for Kavina's reference.
Oh, what was that? So you just duplicate the line? Oh, that's
Yeah, I just
awesome.
copy paste. I
You just
Command
taught
C,
me
Command
something.
B. Huh?
You just taught me something. That's awesome.
There you go. Again, this green little dot helps as a guide too, because that also, like, again, copy paste. I just move that one down here, and it almost locks it with the yellow lines right about there.
Awesome.
Again, I'm going to make vertical lines here, and again, this is just on a Mac, on a MacBook Pro. So if you can use any preview. I think preview is free on all Macs.
Yeah.
That locks there, and then I can copy paste the horizon line a few times right there. That goes right here. Okay. Now that's the image so far. What I'm also going to do, I'm going to duplicate it just in case. So if I want to make any changes, but I'm also going to save this. Okay. I'll save it on my desktop. I'm going to save just in case. If I made any changes, I can go back to the other reference. And let's say we're going to remove all this. And I'm doing Command Z because I want to see the image, right? Now, based off of the reference, again, this is something that you will then use as a guide, okay? So then now I'm going to stop screen sharing on that end and go to my actual camera. Let me remove this, okay? And we're going to start drawing. Alrighty. Let me just move this. We all can see this? You all can see my hand? Okay. Now, again, I have my apple green. What I always like to do is, again, because I used it in the beginning of these lines that we made for the grid, I'm going to sharpen this. Because again, I'm not worried about details. I just want to map out the composition first. What I like to also do, I'm going to tape my paper to my counter because so it doesn't move. Because I hate when my paper moves. Give me 1 second. Just going to say one here. Here. And I think that's good. We just need 2. Make sure my camera's good. Okay. So again, I have Kavina's portrait. I'm going to use my apple green for my first layer, or their first layer, excuse me. Again, I'm just sort of like looking at the composition and saying, okay, how far does the head go out? So probably goes right around, you can start anywhere, right around here. And I'm just lightly kind of going over the head. And right around this square, it kind of goes up and it kind of starts sloping down. And kind of like right around this square, you can see kind of arches down and then it ends right over here. So that's that side, okay? Now down here, okay, you would also see this is where the wing is. That kind of goes around here. And right around this square here, a lot of things are happening, okay? So I can also overlap just to make sure. Again, I'm not applying too much pressure. You are not applying too much pressure in this process, guys. This is sort of where the wing is. And right around, let's say, right around here, and I'm just using this side, kind of like where the wing will sort of come across. And right to this square, it kind of like almost slightly slopes to the other side, and it ends right there. So that's the wing, right? Again, just general composition. I'm not worried about any detail. Now let's go to this square, okay? Now this is interesting too. So in the center, you can kind of see where the mouth is, right? Under the undermouth of the parrot. Right around here, where it starts to kind of like curve, I'm going to add these sort of values here. And it's kind of like almost like a droplet. So it's right around here. Okay. This is underneath the white area. So it's sort of like kind of, again, kind of coming around here. Actually comes right around here. Notice I'm using the side. I'm not holding it like this. I'm using the side because, again, I'm not applying too much pressure. Again, I'm working over here to the top. This is where the eye is. Okay, right around there. You notice that there's a little indentation right there. You guys see that? Let me know if it's too blurry. Okay, this comes around. There's sort of where that white area is. Okay, now again, if you make a mistake, you could always use your white eraser. Okay, it goes away. So remember that. Again, this is sort of where that block of white area is on the bird. I'm just blocking the composition in, guys. Okay. Don't need this. Don't need this. Okay. Now we can also go here on this sort of vertical line. Notice I'm just following along that area. Okay. And right around, not this line, but the one underneath right here is where the beak is, the beginning of the beak. So in this square is crucial, this square here, because it goes right to the edge. Go ahead, Tamina, I'm sorry.
We can't see the reference drawing. We can only see your drawing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, is that okay? Yeah, because I'm
Yeah.
only recording this.
Okay.
I can't,
We can.
unfortunately, I can't like do both at one time for this
Got
image,
Got it.
or less
Okay.
like sort of looking at the other reference. I mean, unless I
I don't know.
can send this reference that you sent me on the chat.
Yes. Yeah. I just don't know how to do that either. I just was like, because it would be nice to see where you're at on the photo.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, let me
Yeah.
see. Wait, I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to, hold on, I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to say save JPEG desktop, copy number 1, close this, and then I'm going to put that in the chat so you guys can follow. Sorry about that.
Yeah. That's okay.
And then let me know if that works. Did it come on the
Yep.
chat? Perfect.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. So right in this square here. Any other questions before I continue? Okay. So right in this square here, this is where it's crucial. This line here, okay, that's probably where the beak will meet. But I'm noticing on this line here on the bottom, this small horizontal line is also where that's kind of arches. So it's right around here, okay? And this tip barely touches that line. Do you guys see that? Barely touches that line. But right around here is where this sort of happens, this really interesting arch, okay? And within that, and this is where this line will be, goes all the way down there, okay? Then it kind of comes around. And then right in here, and sort of this bottom right side of this square on this corner is where the sort of beak comes in and around, okay? And then it also comes across here, okay? And again, by just following these curves, you'll start to see how it kind of bends here. And in this square, halfway point is right around here, right? Now you could also make another, set of vertical lines, diagonal lines to kind of make another grid in this square. You don't have to. But again, you could also just freehand it, and it's right around here. You'll start to see where the beak ends, okay? Now you could also erase things that you don't need. So let's say, for example, you want to straighten up that line. You could erase this diagonal line, this horizontal line, this line. You could now erase the grid because you don't need it, because the beak is there. Okay. Again, guys, I apologize. My lighting in my apartment is not the best, but that's why it's really great to have good natural light, because you could see the image clearly. I'm just erasing all those grid lines, but look how all of it goes away. Again, by just using your white eraser, because I don't need those lines anymore. But then now, I can then go back, and let's say right around here, while those, I can still see those visible lines. Okay. I can then sort of correct all of those sort of feathers, and notice there's sort of spikes on here. This is for obviously Kavina's reference, because obviously the parrot has spikes of feathers that coming out, these small little feathers that come out there. But I don't want these lines to show. And before I continue, I'm going to erase as much as the line quality is where those areas I'm done with are. So then now I can then go back, and let's say, for example, right down here, you would also correct some of those values. Here, it's also interesting, kind of comes around. Okay. So then now I don't need this. You notice I'm kind of erasing while I'm drawing. For the top of the head. It's around here. That head is slightly higher. Almost has a strong, predominantly strong neck, back neck area. But then again, if you don't want to make any of these erasing marks, you want to finish the drawing first, you can do so as well. So now I can look at the mouth area, because this is also nothing really, this is somewhere interesting where that beak sort of opens up slightly. It's kind of coming around and arches this way and actually meets right here in exactly where we put that first line here in. This is slightly wider. So I'm noticing, again, from this horizontal line where it ends, not in the middle, it's kind of closer to the middle. So right around there. And again, this is how you correct your drawing. So if you make any mistakes, you can go back and fix it. And it's interesting too, like this area has some shadow. And I'm just going to block this in, meaning I'm just kind of hovering over this area, kind of making a key indicator like this is where the browns and darker blues will go. But within that, this is also smaller. But then there's also this sort of lines that kind of come around the bird right there. Then I can erase this. And right around here, I notice it's a lot flatter. I don't need any of this area gridded because all it is color value, which is something that's easier to do in that process. Now remember, we're going to do a lot of erasing. Okay. Alrighty. So that is the general composition so far. So then now I can start adding other key indicators in Kavina's portrait. And I notice here too, in this sort of square, there's that sort of orange area. Kind of comes around. Right around here. It's kind of like its little chin or the neck where it kind of curves around the head of the anatomy of the bird. Notice the eye is right around there. And around the eye, kind of you can start to see all those color variables right around there. So this is all the sort of whiter area. Here's the general beak. Here's that bright, vivid crimson red, blends to yellows and greens and blues, and then slowly kind of comes around, slopes around to the oranges. Now within that too, I'm just also going to add some like kind of vertical lines that kind of go up and down to kind of separate some of the feathers. And notice I'm actually holding it like a brush because I kind of want to follow along those hairlines or feather lines, excuse me. We keep calling it hairlines. This is sort of where those blue areas are. And notice I'm sectioning them off, right? Depending on the position and then depending on the value of colors I'll add later.
The feathers do look like you got a buzz cut, so it definitely looks like hair too. I know it's feathers, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because like I'm looking at more and more of the animal and I'm noticing more and more kind of information. So now I'm again sectioning them off. I could also section off this area here. It's interesting that diagonal line that ran through in that center right around here, all the way from top right to the bottom left, is kind of interesting because it almost lines up perfectly with the value. So this is lighter, this is darker. Notice those feathers are going downwards. Now this is something, again, Kavina, depending on whether or not how you want to tackle this, I wouldn't draw each feather. I think that's a waste of time, to be honest.
thank you for telling me that because I probably would have hyper focused.
No, because I think, again, part of this process, guys, would be to sort of look at your animals and again, sort of look at how do you sort of tackle this assignment in the context of your reference, but also have fun color mixing. Okay. So how does this look? I can't see it on my end.
It looks amazing.
Any questions about this process so far from Kavina's reference? Just make sure I can see the chat. Okay. So then now, while this is finished, what do I do now? What do I do? Oh, you know what? Actually,
You put your darks in, right?
yes, I just noticed the eye is too small.
Yeah, I noticed. I was there. You go.
Slightly, yeah, that's better. Proportion, it didn't look proportionally correct. And then obviously the socket of the eye. Okay. Now, let's add some darks. Okay. What's a good color combination?
How
of
do
the
you do
darks?
that when there's so many colors?
Well, by visual analysis, we'll then dictate what colors we see. So now let's go back to the reference.
Okay.
So we'll start to understand exactly what we're seeing. Okay. Now, we're going to get into this area, the mouth first. Now, visually, oh, you know what? Actually, hold on. Let me not pull up this image. Let me pull up the one without the grid, because now we don't need this anymore.
Right.
Because we're done with this. Did I save that one? Hold on. Yes, I did. Oh, no, I didn't. Hold on. It's still in the chat, right? I'm going to download it again.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay. So I had multiple copies of this. Okay. So within this reference, we zoom in. Look at this color blue, turquoisey, bluish, almost blue, green / violet, right?
Yeah.
This is something, again, depending on the reference, you guys can see this, right? The reference. Depending on the
Yeah.
reference, you'll then understand what colors you visually see from the image, but then apply it to the drawing as closely as possible. That is why we have so much time to work on this assignment. It's because the majority of it is by looking and observing exactly which colors are used. Notice here too, there's oranges on top of the reds and there's hints of blue, right? Nothing really is black, even the eye. So if you zoom on it more and more, there's blues, a little bit of brown, some violet, little bit of red. You zoom out, and subconsciously the mind will then fill in the rest of the space with color in terms of color perception. But using those darker variables, you'll start to see what happens when we start to use color as darks and color as lights. Now, when things get so bright, let's say, for example, these whites, Kavina I would highly recommend using blush pinks, peaches, browns, and blues underneath the white, because again, intuitively, you'll add layers on top of layers. So a method would be to work what? Dark to light, always, okay? Because if you work light to dark, things will look muddy and dull and will look too much like an illustration, like a cartoon. You want to work from the natural world. And again, the more and more we analyze the image, and even by looking at our hands, so if you look at your hands right now, all of you, what colors do you see? Nobody is necessarily black and white. Everybody has filled with color. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter, what ethnicity, what part of the world you're from, all of us have the same colors if you really analyze it clearly. But then if you start to see all those variables of colors also factor in terms of our skin tones, our wrinkles, our scars, the hairs, the older parts of our skin, the surfaces, areas are smoother, things have more kind of lines or more kind of texture. It all depends on how you look at your reference in terms of your image. By understanding your physical anatomy of the human body, you really then appreciate the color variables of how you were made, which is interesting. And it also repeats to nature, because we're all coming in from the same planet, right? So part of this is by just looking at the image, right? By really analyzing the image, taking a good, again, 5 minutes at least by just looking at it. That's all you need to do. You want to write notes. You want to then sort of think about color mixing on certain areas, by all means. But this is the approach that I want you guys to start to discover on your own, but then tackle collectively, because we're all going to be working on the same assignment together. Throughout this process, though, then you'll be able then to select which image and which sort of reference you would like to use. But again, part of this assignment would be to find the best image. Okay. And again, this is Kavina's image that we're using for the demo. It's not necessarily we're going to be using for our finals, but this is a great approach to tackle this assignment, because parrots are also really colorful, but also have a lot of dense images on their surface. There's scales, there's feathers, there's shinier parts of the beak, there's harder surfaces, softer surfaces. There's so much on a bird, right? But then you can have fun with it. You can also then kind of play around and see how you can kind of dictate how you want to tackle it. Any questions about that?
Nope. Wait, I'm
Okay.
excited.
All righty. Okay, so then now let's get into the color combinations. Now, I'm zooming in again to closer to this area. Okay, just underneath the mouth, not the beak yet. Now, by just looking at it, I see, get some colors out. I see indigo blue. Let me get my brown. You have to bear with me. I have to go to read all of these colors. This is that mulberry, which is like a lighter violet. I'm also going to experiment with that. I have my regular violet. Okay. And then again, we're not using black. We're going to make our own black. I'm trying to find my brown. Hold on. I have my Tuscan red just in case, and then my dark brown. Those are my colors so far. But within that, I'm going to take a little bit of the light cerulean blue, just a little bit. I'm going to put it on the side for now. I'm not going to use it yet. But I'm also going to take some. I have grass green, but there's another green I've been looking for. Hold on, let me see. Or you know what? We're going to mix colors. I'm going to go really dramatic yellow. Okay. Now we're going to zoom in. Y'all can see that? Okay. Let me know if you cannot see it. So again, darker blue, blues and indigo browns, or excuse me, indigo blues. I said it backwards. Indigo blues and dark brown. Okay, so I have my indigo blue. Just going to sharpen my brown. Actually, no, the brown is pretty sharp. Okay. I'm going to put these colors aside. Now, what I also would recommend, if you want to write these down in terms of like color combinations, this is the names right here. You can say indigo blue, right? And then dark brown are my darks. You can put them on the side. You can write some notes and just make sure. What I always like to do is, again, follow along the strokes. And you know what I'm just noticing right now? This is a lot. Hold on. This is a lot shorter. And this is a lot wider. I just don't notice that right now. Correct this. See, I make mistakes. So now I got to correct it. Indigo blue. Notice I'm not going to just go up and down. Okay. I'm going to kind of work my way around, going either circular, horizontal, and vertical, or even at a diagonal, to kind of just apply a thin layer of the indigo blue. And you work on top of your apple green. Okay. Not applying too much color, not applying too much pressure. Okay. If I did, oop, it already broke. Let me sharpen it back up again. Hold on. If you add too much pressure, again, like my pencil did right now, it will break. So you really want to take your time. And I kind of like to work in kind of circular motions. because it'll again help me understand how much pressure, then how much texture I can go back and kind of apply on that surface. So I'm just applying a thin layer of that indigo blue, but right around here, it gets a little bit darker. So I'm going to apply more pressure. You see how much darker that is? You can kind of see it right there. Okay. And right around here too, there's any interesting blues. I'm going to apply more pressure here. Okay. So then now I'm going to take some of the brown. Okay. I'm going to go over it. Now, brown and blue make a really nice neutral black from nature, from the natural world. And it's great when you apply your apple green as your first layer, they all blend beautifully together. I'm just going over those layers of the blue. I'm not applying more pressure. I'm just applying the similar amount of pressure that I applied in the blue in the beginning, not too dark here, because I want that blue to be really dark, but I also want this to look a little bit more natural. And the brown is a great color to use. Okay. I'm going to put that on the side. Okay. I'm going to take some now, go back some more, add some more pressure with the indigo blue and add some darks. Oh, pencil broke again. Hold on. Okay. And again, you can start to feel it. It gets darker and darker the more layers we apply. I notice, and the reason why I got some of my Tuscan red out, let me just sharpen it. There's some brown, lighter browns here. And I'm going to actually mix some of the Tuscan brown, or excuse me, the Tuscan red, okay, on top of these layers. And again, I sharpened it, and I just want to be really careful. And again, I'm just kind of molding it, modeling it, and blending it in that area. Get that nice sort of tint of the brown right around here. It kind of mixes it with that Tuscan red and indigo blue and brown together. So I'm going to leave that be. And I'm also going to add a little bit of the violet. These are all, again, color combinations I'm just mixing with. I'm going to work it around here. Yeah, you can see that it's starting to come up in terms of how we can look at the image now. And then I'm going to go back and add some final blues here with more pressure. And I'm going to blend all those colors together. And notice I'm kind of going in this sort of vertical back and forth direction. Excuse me, horizontal direction. Because I kind of want to, I'm following along those values. But I also see kind of like sets of lines that go back and forth, almost as a diagonal. You guys see that? And this is how you could almost build that sort of richer texture on top of those colors that we add first. Okay. But now, so those are a variety of darks. Okay. So let's go over them one more time. So I have my indigo blue. Okay. One of my favorite colors. Okay. You have your dark brown, also a great color. I have a Tuscan red. And then I have a little bit of the violet. So those are the colors that I use so far. So then now I'm going to do something radically different. I'm going to now apply a little bit of yellow. Do not be scared. Because once you mix yellow and blue, you get green. And again, you can see it the more and more you apply pressure. So I'm just going to slowly blend the yellow because there's this kind of nice turquoise of light right around here. And rather than using a green, I'm just going to apply some yellow. And I'm also going to use this as a middle highlight on top of that Tuscan red that we applied here. And obviously, look, we don't see too much yellow, not too much. You see how it blends with all those colors. You guys see that? But then now if I take some light cerulean blue, and I'm going to kind of blend this area on top, you get a nice sort of highlight. And I'm kind of applying a little bit of a more sort of pressure, just a little bit, because I want some of that cerulean blue to come up. You see that? And it kind of blends in tonally here on the bottom, which is interesting. Okay. I'm also going to add some indigo blue inside the beak because it's really dark. Oop, hold on. It's broken, but let me see if I can still salvage it. Oh, no, it broke. I got to erase it. Oh, excuse me, I got to sharpen it. So right inside, I'm going to go over with some indigo blue. And I'm actually applying a little bit more pressure. Look how dark that is. You get that really nice high contrast, almost tone of that color. You guys see that? I don't want it to fight with this because that's pretty dark. And I'm going to let that be for the time being and see how it reacts to the other colors in contrast to here. Okay. Now, what you also can do is add some more darker browns to neutralize this cooler palette. So if I went, let's say, for example, if I added some dark brown and just kind of made a sort of layer on top of this, these blend neutrally together. I'm just noticing I'm using the side of the pencil. I'm not holding like this, using the side, and I'm kind of going like slightly above the surface of the paper. Okay. So now, so far, any questions about these color combinations of shadows? We did some midtones. We're now going to add a little bit of light. Now, before I even jump to this white, I'm going to put that on the side. I don't need it, but I'm going to show you what you can use as a substitute. So I have peach. That's one. I have, where's my yellow ochre? Hold on. Trying to find my Spanish orange or my yellow ochre. Hold on. I have my poppy red. I don't need orange. These are colors that are way too bright. I'm not putting in there. I'm trying to find. I have a crimson red, which is a good red, but not, it's still too bright. Spanish orange. Thank you. Put all this away. Now, there are little bits of texture here, little kind of fine lines. I'm going to use some blush and some Spanish orange on top of those areas. So this is kind of like lying right around here. And I'm just making sort of textures. And I'm also going to just like kind of make some pointillism and some dabs on that area. Kind of make that texture. Notice it blends very subtly, very, very subtly. Because there's also highlight right under here. And by just lightening this up, this blue will become a lot darker. Okay. Okay. Now, if I take some peach, okay. Now this is, again, I'm going to use the side. It gets a lot brighter. Now this is a great color. Act as a mid-tone light without using the white. Yeah. But then now, also what I like to do is add some indigo blue to darken this area even further. And I want to blend those areas. You guys see it? And again, I'm going over some of those mid-tones and lights to kind of, again, exaggerate some of those highly dark contrasting colors. But it's really the tonal variations of exploring all these colors, guys. Then now I can go back and add some blush pinks. I'm going to neutralize this with some browns. And that is my lower beak. Do you guys see that? Now within that, the color variables of this light will make this even darker. Because all of this, where Kavina's Parrot's kind of the side of the white here, will brighten that up, and then we'll also push that back. Okay. Any questions of these color combinations before I jump into the beak?
Just, can you take your colored pencils and put cools on one side and warms on the other? Just kind of show us real quick.
Yeah. And just for these ones that we used?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the family of colors. we didn't use any one.
Okay.
I have apple green, light cerulean blue, violet, and then my indigo blue. Okay. Between that, we didn't use any of this mulberry. Yeah. Between that, okay, I have some yellows, Spanish orange, peach, Tuscan red, and some dark brown. Those are the colors.
Because you wouldn't think you would have so many warm colors in there because it like
Exactly.
first look is it looks like it's just all dark.
Well, is it all dark?
No, not really. Well, not completely, but hold on.
This goes back to the lecture when I said there's nothing that's fully black or white
Right.
ever. By using the color combinations, and again by exploring some of these colors, we're going to find a variable of mistakes of what colors to use.
Mhm.
But this is where we can explore, and by analyzing, oh, I see more reds down here. I see more light cerulean blues up here. I see a little bit of yellow. Now, if I mix that kind of turquoisey cerulean blue color with blue, indigo blue, right?
Mhm.
You get what? Green. Blue and yellow make green. And that's why it's always important, guys, to look at the color wheel. And if you want to use opposite or complementary colors, it's the color opposite the color wheel. So if it's a blue, it will be orange. If it's a yellow, it would be violet. If it's a red, it would be green. But if you want to use a secondary or tertiary color, look at the color wheel, right? Is it a more yellow green? Is it a more redder purple? Is it a more bluer purple? So on and so forth. That's why it's always interesting to use that as a base and just color mix as practice. Make smaller preliminary drawings throughout this process and see what works. And then in terms of color temperature, this is cooler,
Mhm.
but there's more neutral browns in there and some reds the more and more you analyze it. But what happens when you mix it all together? It looks like a geometric shape, but then it also tones beautifully with when we start adding the white here, because this will pop this area here. But then this will also be like a nice neutral, because again, there's blues
Mhm.
this side, but there's also nice sort of lighter browns. Right around here, there's some more turquoise blue,
Yeah.
just really interesting. And again, you'll see, let me do a screen share. I have my image here and I'm like zooming in like this close.
Yeah, that's when I wasn't doing as much. So now I can really see.
Yep. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I wish it was had even better pixels.
Yep. Well, now you can. Now, again, guys, we have the opportunity. Let's say, for example, if we're not happy with this image, stop, right? We'll find another one.
Mhm.
Because this is not the ultimate, be all end all.
Right.
But it really helps me dictate whether or not if this is the correct image for what it is that we'd like to do in terms of color mixing. Now, this is great as an exercise,
Yeah.
right? We could all exercise this together. And by the way, I'm just noticing my light on my camera. It's not the greatest. Hold on. It's getting like dark in here. Let me turn on. Hold on.
Oh,
That's worse. Is that worse?
yeah, I can't see the colors at all.
Yeah. My clouds are coming in. Not my clouds. The clouds are coming in.
You own all the clouds.
Yeah.
I'm gonna now move to the beak, unless if anybody else has any further questions so far. Okay. So then now let's go to the beak. And again, I'm really zooming in, I almost want to sort of, again, obsess over the reference because I'm really understanding the colors. So again, we work from what? Got really dark in my space. Hold on. I can't even see my paper that well. Hold on, let me zoom in. Can you guys see that? The camera got really dark. What happened?
It's hard to see. Well, we can see it, but I don't see any color value. I mean, I see a tiny bit of white, but
I'm gonna try
Yeah,
my,
it's hard to see the light colors right now.
yeah. My whole apartment got really dark because of the clouds. Hold on, let me you turn on this light. Would this be better? Oh God, that's worse.
Yeah. It's better than before. We can see at least.
Wonder. Hold on. Is this
That's good.
or okay, this or this?
Uh,
I'll do it again. So this or this.
that one's good.
Better? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a shadow on my phone that's pointing down. Oh, that is a little better. Hold on. Can I zoom in. Yeah, you can kind of see it, right?
Yeah.
It's not the best. I apologize, guys. So let me zoom out. Alrighty, so let's go to the beak. Okay. Same color combinations I have next to me. Okay. What do? Dark first. Let me get my two wonderful pairs, brown and blue. So again, making sure this pencil doesn't break again. I'm gonna just go lightly over this area with the blue in terms of the darks, but I also, remember I added indigo blue here, which is pretty dark already. I have to be mindful how much pressure I add. So by just analyzing the image, I'm just gonna add like a light wash. And I'm gonna try to kind of go in this direction, the way of the beak. I'm gonna try. Because I don't want to do this because I want that sort of blend to kind of blend tonally because the beak is going vertically up and down, almost in a slight diagonal. Again, guys, take your time. Actually, hold on. I'm just noticing now. This line is not. I need to fix this. I'm gonna take some of the apple green. I'm gonna erase some of this. It's slightly wider or slightly more narrow. Right around, hold on. Oh, there you go. More straighter on this side. It's interesting. Okay. Let's go back to blue. And again, do I add white on this side? If I'm looking at Kavina's reference, look at it carefully. No, you don't. There's a hair of white here, just a highlight. That's it. We'll talk a little bit about adding highlights. But again, you really want to work from dark to light first. You want to apply all of your layers of your darks throughout the draw line first, then go back and add middle tones and lights later. Okay. So there's a thin, I don't know if you guys can see, hold on. Do you guys see the blue? Just waving my hand over it. Okay. I'm now going to add majority more brown on top of these blues. And come to think of it, the beak is almost all brown, almost. And you can feel it getting softer once you blend certain colors together. It's really interesting. And let's say this area, like if I put my hand over, I don't want it to blend. I can also take a paper towel, but I have a long sleeve shirt on, so I could just do this to kind of cover it. Okay. What I'm also going to do now is add, let's see, what other colors do I have? let's kind of play around with some of the greens. So I have grass green, which is here. This is a sort of again, a basic bluer green. Let's sharpen it. Gonna add a layer over here. Kind of blend with some of those blues. It's interesting, kind of the shadow here underneath the beak, like this area, is more sort of lighter turquoise, lighter blue, and violet. So I need to go back. And I'm going to add some reds, because if you mix those two together, you get a nice, interesting color combination. And guys, don't hesitate to ask any questions during this process. If you're confused about this process, please let me know. Next week, we're going to be working in one-on-one and talking about what reference you've chosen and how your first layer is coming along. So by next week, you should have a good enough reference, as well as sort of go back and ask your questions today, but then also you can ask them next week. So if you have any concerns about adding your first layer or even your second layer, you can ask me then. I'm now adding some violets. Again, I'm just building upon these layers. Let's get some Spanish orange. The Spanish orange is a great neutral color too. It's very bright, so be careful. Don't add too much pressure. What I'm doing is kind of going over that middle gray brown area. Again, I'm just trying to be mindful to kind of remember to go in that direction, up and down, vertically, almost at a diagonal, because I don't want it to kind of become too kind of rigid in terms of like zigzags or kind of horizontal stripes, because I want the beak to kind of slope downwards. So then now I'm going to take some more pressure. Guys, really, really careful about this process, guys. And I'm just going to add some more darker shadows with some indigo blue. And all those color combinations will now blend. I'm not applying too much pressure, remember. Kind of interesting, there's almost like scratches on the beak, like scars from the animal. Again, just following those lines. We're still working on shadows, guys. We're not even worrying about middle tones yet. Now, in these early stages too, you could also work again upside down if you would like. You don't have to, but actually I feel like it sort of helps distinguish where the darks and lights are much more clearly. You can again feel the resistance of the paper, but then also feel how it blends with all the colors that we've added. And I'm just using indigo blue at these stages. Again, building upon the texture. Get a nice solid beak. You want it to look sharp, obviously, because the beak is sharp. Not worrying about highlights, remember. Okay. That is not important. Not yet. Take your time. Okay. Build these layers, guys, with patience. A lot of students always struggle and they kind of want to rush this process. Taking out dark brown. Notice I'm not going overlapping those layers here with the blues. I'm just kind of going over the midtones where that lighter kind of muddier brown is. And the brown will be a great neutral color because once we add some highlights, you'll see how it kind of comes up. The image will start to release its colors. The more and more you start to add some highlights. And what I mean by release, it will sort of rise up to the surface in terms of what happens here, in terms of these mid and lighter tones. But you want to build upon the layers underneath by analyzing what really is being below those colors before we add any more darks or lights. Okay. Just going to correct this area here. This area almost kind of comes out a little bit more darker here. And Kavina, I apologize. My lighting is not the best. I don't know if this image quality is good. It's for your image. Hopefully you guys can see this all.
Oh, I think it's really helpful to see how you're making the colors kind of happen in layers and layers. So, because I would have approached it probably too fast and just like, oh, here's my crayon. I'm going to put that on there. And then that's probably why I've been disappointed in the past with colored pencils because I rushed the process.
Mhm. And that's normal because, you know, this is a learning process, guys. All of us are going to encounter these challenges, but it's really how you kind of, again, use experimentation, trial and error. That's why we become what? Professional failures in this class. You do not come out making a hyper realistic Renaissance style drawing when you're at the beginning. You have to make those mistakes. I'm switching over to violet. Okay. That's a nice sort of area I want to be in. I'm going to add a little bit of the Tuscan red. This is a great color to kind of play around with some of those warmer lights and warmer shadows. Oh, this broke. Hold on. I'm going to try to save this and kind of add more of the layers first before I kind of abandon the color. Oh, piece of it came off. Tuscan red is a great color, guys. Don't ever underestimate it. And it's really interesting. The more I'm analyzing the drawing, the more kind of lines I see, the more kind of variables I can see and spot out. It's interesting. Oh, it broke. It's okay. Let me sharpen it. And again, your pencils will break. Don't do what I'm doing too much in terms of sharpening like crazy. I have a tendency to sharpen like a madman. Okay, this might break too. Hopefully it won't. And you know what? That is a good layer so far. Alrighty. Now we're going to move over to some Spanish orange and yellow. These are good colors to use. So first, I'm going to actually blend in some of those areas where you kind of get some nice turquoisey blue colors again. So by adding some of the yellow over the sort of areas of the Tuscan red and the indigo blue and violet. Okay, switch over to Spanish orange. And you'll feel the difference between the yellows and the Spanish orange. It's a combination of the Tuscan red and yellow. I want to warm this up. I don't want it too kind of starchy blue. The blue is also, again, another color that could be too dominating throughout that process. Okay. Now we're going to hop over to some light cerulean blue. You notice the cerulean blue is kind of in the majority of like this area and then this area. Okay. Cerulean blue is a light. Remember that. It's a very bright color. And gradually applying layers, just very lightly. Do you see how it all blends together? It's interesting. Tonally. And you could also see that's a pretty bright white. But then if I add it here, again, I'm following along those lines. Try not to jump ahead, guys. I see a lot of students jumping ahead throughout that process. It's okay if you do, but remember, you will lose all the hard work you've added before. And again, it gets difficult to make some changes more and more throughout that process.
This is Cricket. Quick question. What if you make a mistake? I mean, is it easier to go over the top of that and make it darker again, or
No.
erase it, start over, or what's
Well,
the deal?
Let's say, that's actually a good question, Cricket. Thank you for asking that. If you made mistakes at this stage right over here, we can take our white erasers and erase it all. It should all go away. But if I applied more pressure, it will be a lot difficult to take that away. You really want to make your mistakes like as quickly as possible, if it's possible to like catch it. Because if I added more and more layers, like let's say if I erased all this, it will potentially all go away. But again, I have to start from scratch, so meaning go back to the dark and then gradually work my way up to the light in order to get this more correct. If I added more, let's say if I added more dark than I needed, I should erase it now before I add my middle tones and dark and lights. If I added more lights at this stage, I would have to erase the whole thing and go back and then fix my darks, and then my middle tones, then my lights. That makes sense?
So remove more than like try to cover it up.
Yes, if you can. But there's a point sometimes in the end, you know, in the final layers of our drawing, let's say if we mess up like big time, you have to make a decision. Do you want to add more layers? Because the more and more you add, the more and more pressure you add on top of that will make it muddy, depending on the animal and then depending on the color choices. It all varies, but we can try that too to see how it looks. We'll make a mistake here on like, we'll make mistakes here and I'll show you guys how to erase that. Because I think that's an important challenge that I think a lot of students are always facing. Did that make sense, Cricket?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Notice I'm analyzing this highlight right over here, this top. It's cooler. It's a lot cooler. So I'm adding this cerulean blue. I'm not applying too much pressure. Very light. If I applied a lot of pressure, it would look like this. That is way too bright. What happens if you erase it? It's still there. there's still a mark there. So be careful, guys. Do not apply too much pressure. It's very important that you don't. And you're building the layers on top of each other. Okay, so far. I don't know if you guys can see that. Is that better? Is that better? Those colors you guys can see?
Yeah, that
Okay.
looks better.
I'm gonna hover over my camera one more time. Let me just finish up these areas. Let's say if it's now getting too blue or too red or too yellow, whatever color it is, you could then use a complementary color again to kind of neutralize that. So if I added some orange, this is the poppy red. I'm looking for my orange. Here it is, some orange. Use another complementary color from that orange to tone it down. Tone the color down. If it's too cool, add a complementary color to tone it down. But you'll see what happens once all of those color combinations come through. Okay. So then now, final layers. Peach, and the scary part, white. Because this will kill every other color in terms of what's next to it and what's around it. Be very careful how you add your highlights, okay? Especially with the whites. The peach is a great color to use. So look what happens when we start applying peach. It almost acts like a white. Peach there, here. It's kind of like little cracks on this side. It's interesting. Look on here. Add a little bit more Spanish orange to neutralize this color. A little bit more indigo blue to darken this. Notice this now, the indigo blue almost acts like a neutral blue, like a cooler, lighter blue, because it's layering on top of all of those lighter colors. Here's my brown. Just going over some of the shadows up here. There's kind of shadows on the side. Darkening these shadows. And I'm just using raw indigo blue. That area all together. Okay. Now, are we ready for the whites? So that's it so far. Okay. Now, the whites. Be very careful. See how bright that is? Oop. Covering the wrong side. Do you guys see that? It's really, really bright. Find whatever to push here so it can kind of blend tonally. Then here. See how the images are now coming a lot brighter. Add a little bit of cerulean blue. Notice if I add a color on top of white, it's really hard to blend because you lose a lot of the color. That's why you want to be really mindful with the white. Brown. Relaxing the white. Blue. Move the camera slightly down. Wait, hold on. I need to. Some more indigo blue down here. Spanish orange down here. A little bit of Tuscan red. Switch over to cerulean blue. Highlights. It's kind of like working upside down, but then going up, like pointing the pencil upwards, which follows those lines. A little bit of around here. And lastly, a little bit more indigo blue. And I'm kind of going slightly faster because now I can blend all of those colors together, which is going to be really exciting. And it gets a little bit more trickier to blend more and more when you add more layers. But finally, there's the beak. You guys see it? I'm just I'm trying to cover. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me get a sheet of paper. We use this drawing paper. There you go. You guys see that?
Yes.
What questions do we have? I'm going to move this.
Do you keep on adding the layers to make it like a solid color, or where do you stop?
It stops when I'm happy with those highlights and shadows. So for example, I think this is a good area to stop on the beak.
Okay.
Now, what we could do, again, let me move it to this side, is now shift to highlights here,
Mhm.
as well as the highlights that are going around the beak, like this white area here. Because then all of this will kind of push back, and more we'll add layers. How does it look on the camera? Oh,
Looks good.
the quality, guys. I apologize. The picture is not the best. I'm sorry. The lighting. So again, notice how mindful I was with the white. Very, very mindful, not too much. And I swapped it over some browns and blues and ceruleans and some Tuscan reds for those lights. But really, you'll start to see more and more the color variables of like how bright, you can see how bright that is in relationship to the dark lights and the shadows we made underneath the mouth. Now, in contrast with each other, look how dark this became now in relationship to here. Because all the buildup of the color, so I'm trying to like hover over that area, really helps then dictate how that's being read from shadows. Like around here, we can start adding some more indigo blues, but the majority of the ratio would be what? More browns and greens. because you don't want this blue to be the same exactly like here, because this is deep blue. Here, if you start to see it more and more, it's more what? Let me do a screen share if you guys can see what I'm saying. It's more green and more kind of like almost brown or green blue. It's very different from this color, right? There's subtleties to it. And you notice here how it blends to like yellow, Spanish orange, and some yellows to the orange. That's something that then we can fix on the tone sheet of paper. So if I added a blue layer, right, and I added orange on top of it, it will neutralize it. But if I added yellow, it will make what? Green. There's almost a greener yellow to these areas. Do you guys see these lines? These feathers? Before it blends into the orange, this blood orange, which is beautiful, right? But there's also subtleties to that. So those color combinations I have to keep my eye out for. And then now if I move over here, notice this bright white. This is where I can add some just raw white later at the end of the drawing, at the complete end of the drawing, okay?